In the lands west of Persia, there arose a kingdom small in size, but disciplined in spirit. Its people were neither the wealthiest nor the most cultured, but they understood order. They knew how to hold a line. They knew when to advance and when to withdraw. These were not teachings written in scrolls. They were inherited through blood, through the memory of men who had survived by knowing their limits. The son of their king was raised in this tradition, but he was also taught something else. Philosophers came from distant cities to tell him that the world was vast, that glory was the highest good, that a man could become more than mortal if his deeds outpaced his years. The boy listened. He learned to fight as his father's soldiers fought, but he learned also to dream as no soldier should. When his father died, the son inherited not only a throne, but an army hardened by decades of border wars. The men were loyal. The formations were tested. The kingdom was secure. Another king might have fortified what his father had built. He might have ensured that the order his people knew would endure for generations. But this king did not fortify. He gathered every able man, every reserve of grain, every coin in the treasury, and he marched east. He did not march to defend. He marched because he believed the world itself was a thing to be taken. And the world, for a time, gave way before him. But what happens when a man is taught that there is no horizon he cannot reach? Victory became a sequence without pause. Cities opened their gates or burned. Armies formed and scattered. Satraps knelt. Kings fled. Every crossing of a river was declared impossible until it was done. Every mountain range was named impassable until his men passed through it. The soldiers marched because they had marched before, because the formations held, because their king rode at the front and did not hesitate. But something began to erode, quietly, beneath the surface of triumph. At first, it was only distance. The men were far from their homes, far from the valleys they knew. Letters took months to arrive, if they arrived at all. Sons were born, whom fathers would never see. Wives grew old, waiting for men who would not return. The soldiers did not speak of this openly. They had been trained not to. But in the silence of camp, after another city had fallen, there was no joy left. Only exhaustion. Only the knowledge that another march would begin at dawn. The king did not see this. He saw only that the formation still held, that the men still obeyed. He believed that will alone could carry them beyond every limit. When his generals began to speak cautiously of return, he dismissed them. When the soldiers grew quiet, he gave speeches about destiny and immortality. He did not understand that men could march without believing, that they could obey without following. Conquest had become its own rhythm, and he had forgotten that rhythm is not purpose. At the edge of a river wider than any they had crossed, the army finally stopped. Not because the enemy was stronger, not because the land was impassable. They stopped because the men refused to go further. They stood in their formations and did not move. Their king wept. He raged. He pleaded, but they would not cross. The refusal was quiet. He turned back, but the return was not a homecoming. It was a slow unraveling. Cities he had conquered fell into disorder the moment his soldiers departed. Governors he had appointed turned on one another. The roads he had opened became trails for bandits and the displaced. The empire was vast, but it had no center. It had no structure that could hold without his presence, and his presence could not be everywhere. He died far from the kingdom his father had built, not in battle, not in glory. He died of fever, of exhaustion, of wounds that would not heal. He died among men who had followed him to the ends of the earth and found nothing there but distance. The soldiers wept, but their weeping was not only for him. It was for the years they had lost, for the homes they would never rebuild, for the sons who had grown into men they did not recognize. Within a generation, the empire his will had forged was divided, then fractured, then forgotten as a single realm. What remained were stories, statues, and the knowledge that a man may conquer the world and still lose what cannot be taken by force. The mounted form travels swiftly, But the road that has no end leads only to dust. Men forget this when they are young. The world does not. What cannot be held was never possessed.